Hi, welcome to Film Riot. Today's not your average review, because it's not a fucking review. I lied. It is a review. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. Come here. Really. I'm sorry. Now go away. Today we're talking about the Loupedeck, not to be confused with the poop deck. No, because this is nothing but poop. No, it's everything but poop. It's not poop, is what I'm saying. The point is, we like it. I want to put a leash on it and walk it. I want this thing to be my dog. But not just my pet dog. I want it to be my dog. I want to lock it down on a Friday night. Maybe watch Die Hard or Winnie the Pooh. Whichever's fine with me, as long as we're together. But before we talk about my dog, we have an editing tip from Lucas Harger. He's an Emmy winner.
When I start to edit a dialogue scene or I'm starting to cut interview footage, I'll often disable the video track and edit with audio only. At this point in the process, I've already made selects and already culled down all of my either takes of dialogue or my favorite sound bites of interview. And so I've seen everything and I've watched everything, and then I take my favorite takes and the ones that I think are the strongest, turn off the video and make the audio work. If you can make the audio work within the scene, if you can make the tempo, the pace, the rhythm, vibe within the scene, you're already 70% of the way there. Then you can turn back on the video track and you can make the visuals work with the audio. There's a ton of stuff that you'll discover as you're cutting audio only, especially as it relates to rhythm. And so that's really the starting point for any dialogue scene or any documentary that I'm cutting, is to turn off the visuals and cut to the audio.
This episode's off to a weird start. So this is the Loupedeck, which is basically a keyboard for filmmakers. I've been seeing this around for a while now. I'm pretty sure I saw the Cinecom guys do a review of it as well, and I've really been wanting to try it out for myself. So I was pretty excited when Loupedeck hit us up to offer to partner on an episode. And yes, that does mean this is a sponsored episode, but no, that does not mean that we're saying anything they told us to say. As always, we only agree to do an episode after we've tested the product out and really like it, and everything we say on our show is our true opinion. Sponsors buy airtime, not our opinions. But jumping right into it, Loupedeck works for Mac and PC and is compatible with After Effects, Audition, Aurora HDR, Capture One, Lightroom, Photoshop, Final Cut Pro, and Premiere Pro, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. But like I did say, this does work for Lightroom and Photoshop, both of which I'm going to try out very soon, but haven't used for myself yet. But I have seen reviews using it for photo editing programs, and it looks pretty amazing for that workflow. So if you're interested in this for photography reasons, I'll link to some photo editing reviews in the notes below. So here we have a bunch of buttons and fun little knobbies to mess with everything labeled nicely, making the whole thing pretty intuitive. We aren't going to be going button by button because all of this is entirely customizable with their app that comes with the panel, and they do have a PDF on their website that will show exactly what the buttons do right out of the box, which I will link to in the notes below as well. But let's go through more of the important buttons/knobs, which knobs, just fun word to say.
My knobs. You can touch my knobs. Turn them and find out what happens. There's no PDF for this bad boy.
Starting at the top left, you have undo and redo, which should be very self-explanatory. If it's not, see a doctor. Bottom left, you have shift, which is rewind, control, which is play, and whatever the hell this symbol is, which is forward. Then right below that, you have copy and paste, which I love that there's just dedicated buttons for that, which really highlights what makes this thing great. It removes steps in your workflow. So if something uses 3 clicks to do, now it's just 1 button push, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you add that up in a full day, it really does increase your work speed and ability to move fluidly. Up here, you have a control dial, which jumps to the next or previous edit point. Then right next to that, you have D1, which zooms in and out of your timeline. And if you press it in, it zooms out entirely to get a bird's eye view of your timeline. And if you press it again, it takes you back to where you were. Then top right, you have before and after, full screen mode, and export, which I love that there's a button for this. Export is an easy Control E, I know, but still, I just like that it's a button. Down at the bottom, you have D2, C5, and C6, and your up and down, left, right buttons. Up will take you to your previous edit point, down will take you to your next edit point, and left and right are gonna take you frame by frame in different directions. D2 will go frame by frame, but if you press it in, it will add an edit to your timeline. C5 will also add an edit, and C6 will add a ripple delete, which that brings us now to the best part about that thing. But before we get to that, let's check in with Lucas. He won an Emmy.
When I cut, I spend a lot more time on the bottom half of my timeline than on top half of my timeline. And so audio, I spend a lot more time dialing and finessing and tweaking audio, because what you can sell the ear, you're going to sell the eye. And so for me, when I'm going through and starting the process of adding sounds, I like to keep my timeline extremely organized. And so what I do is actually lock different layers of the timeline, and then I make myself put specific sounds in specific chunks of my timeline. So what I mean by that is the top portion of my timeline is dedicated to dialogue. The next portion is dedicated to sound effects. The next portion is dedicated to backgrounds. And the last portion is dedicated to music. And this kind of keeps the timeline in an understandable situation, for especially when I have to cut and move large chunks of the timeline around. Everything is organized and tidy. The other thing that it really helps with is when you have to send your timeline to sound design and mix. They're going to reorganize and go through and set it up how they want to set it up. But having already put these elements in their own space really speeds up the process for them and really lets them dive into the creative aspect of sound design and mix, rather than spending as much time as it would have taken to organize all of this sound. And the last thing that it helps is if you have to come back to an edit in 6 months, 12 months, it's all laid out, it's all ready to go, and you know exactly where everything is located on the audio timeline, because your audio can get pretty hairy if you're really building out sound as you're cutting. And so organizing your timeline from the first clip is super important.
By far, my favorite part about this thing is the color correction section. You have contrast, clarity, exposure, blacks, whites, shadows, highlights, vibrance, saturation, temperature, and tint. Now normally you would need to go and drop on Lumetri to the clip you want to use, go into effects controls, and then click and drag each parameter to adjust your look. With this, you just click the clip and start correcting by spinning the knobs here. This adds Lumetri to your clip, and you can grade quicker and with more accuracy, since these knobs allow you to switch fast between the different parameters and alter them in more fine increments. And if you ever wanted to go back to a default start of any of these parameters, you just push it in on the knob that you're at, and there you go. But the best way to use this is by jumping into your color workspace. I like to throw on an overall look to my footage, which means putting an adjustment layer above all the clips and then adding that overall grade. Then for individual changes, you select the layer that your clips are on and then move through, and the clip that the playhead is over will automatically be selected, and then you can correct it from there. So it allows you to move really quickly, jumping to each clip with the toggle wheel and then adjusting the color with the color knobs here. So once you switch over to color, you don't really need to touch your mouse or keyboard anymore. It can all be done right on the Loupedeck. So with the knobs and the color wheels and this method, I'm cutting the time it usually takes me to grade in half, if not more. But going back to customizing, in the app, you can literally change any of the buttons we've talked about to do whatever you want, which is a huge plus, since you can turn this into whatever makes most sense for the way that you like to work. Also, by holding the function button down here, you're changing what the buttons do as well, giving you even more options. So it's just a lot of freedom for however you like to work. But now let's again hear from Emmy Award-winning editor, Lucas Harger.
When I'm processing, organizing, reviewing, and going through interview footage, or honestly dialogue from dialogue scenes, I like to clip and color code each of the different spoken word contents. And so what I mean by that is, for an interview footage, I like to clip out when the interviewee is talking and when the interviewer is talking. And each of those members of the audio field get their own specific color. That way, at a glance, I can visually see who's talking when. This also comes in handy for dialogue scenes. You may want to keep an entire take, and they may have hit a line 2, 3, 4 times within a take, but you don't want to delete or remove, rather, things from the timeline that may come in handy between takes and at the heads and the tails of the take. And so what I like to do is clip out that bit, give it its own color code so that I can see exactly who's talking when, and then when I'm putting together my assemblies, I just grab it, throw it in. Within Premiere, it's a little bit finicky to actually color label something. There's a couple sub-menus, you have to highlight the clip, you right-click it, you go down to label, you pick your label, and then you can move on. And so what I have done is actually mapped all of the colors that I use to a control surface, and this allows me to just select it, hit my color button, and move on. I'm doing this as I'm watching the footage, and so it keeps me engaged and really focusing in on the content and what's actually being said.
In closing, the Loupedeck has a lot of really great features, especially for new editors or someone looking to get into using panels. Check out all the links in the notes below to get more info, other tutorials, and where to buy it, because that's how we roll around here. That's it, my peoples. Until next time, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.